This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome to another episode of the Maui Causes and Citizens Initiative television show on Kaku. Eternal thanks to Kaku for existing in this community and giving voice to ideas and information that you're not likely to see in the usual media sources here in Maui County. The Maui News is pretty much tied up by corporate interests. You're going to see there what those people want you to see. They're going to whitewash the performance of your county council members. They're going to make you think that your county council members are all working for your best interests. And we're here to tell you that several of your county council interests are really working for county council members, are really working for the best interests of their corporate backers. People in Hawaii have lived so long under oppression that everybody here seems to think that it's normal. As we've said before, Hawaii is way ahead of the pack in being controlled by corporate interests from the top down. The rest of the mainland is only beginning just to catch up. People on the mainland are finally beginning to realize that their state and federal government have essentially been taken over by corporate interests, and that those governments are working for the best interests of corporate profits, not the best interests of the people. We here in Maui have been living under that kind of rule for a long, long time. It has been institutionalized, and it is part of every part of our local and state government. Corporate interests are running the show. And this program is dedicated towards having an effect on that. We seek to be a positive disruption, which is a necessary part of a free democracy, because long-standing political machines get corrupt. It's what happens. And that is the situation here in Hawaii, and it is time to clean house. And we are doing everything that we can to present candidates and ideas that help support a progressive agenda that will provide transparency, that will take our governments back and truly allow them to represent the people. And that starts by having candidates who are willing to run for office and are willing to do so without corporate backing. We need to take corporate money out of our local politics. If we can't do it on a national level, we need to do it on a local level. And that means you supporting candidates who are affirming that they will not take corporate money. And we have with us one of those candidates. Terez Amato ran for state senate in 2016.
2014.
2014, it was that long ago, oh my.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was. Wow, time really does fly.
It does.
And there is some potential for you to be running for state senate again in 2018.
Indeed.
So I want to thank you for everything that you've done in the past and everything that you want to do to help protect the future of Maui citizens.
Well, it's a team effort. It takes all of us working together to make these very important and necessary changes. And I just want to thank you for hosting this show, as well as Kaku, because, you know, in the age of such strongly corporate-controlled media, it is very hard to get a balanced viewpoint on issues. And it's so critical because people need to be aware of what's going on. They need to be educated, and it's only through independent media such as yours that we can do this. So thank you for this.
Sure,
the service that you provide to the community. It's very valuable.
Well, you know, we stand in support of candidates like yourself who bring a progressive message, who bring, you know, something to the table that is not corporate backed. So thank you for doing that. How did you get interested and involved in politics?
Well, that happened back in 2013. You know, I was watching the GMO labeling hearing. You know, during that time, the people just wanted a label on their food. They just wanted to know what they were eating.
Sure.
And our state legislators were not interested in that. They didn't want us to know. They sided with their corporate backers and said, no, sorry, you don't deserve the right to know what's in your food and what you're eating. And that made me mad, the way that the people that took the time out of their day that actually flew in from neighbor islands from all across the state to testify in support of the measure. You know, the hearing was very rude and cold, and people were treated so poorly that I got mad. And I said, who are these people that we keep re-electing, and why are we re-electing them? They don't care about us. They're not listening to us. We need a change. I decided that, you know, you can only talk about it for so long before you realize, hey, you know, maybe I need to get involved and try and do something about it. So that was why I decided to run for state senate in 2014. And that was also why I made the very public commitment to never take money from the corporations or their lobbyists, because people need to know who you represent. If you truly represent the people, then you don't need that corporate money. Right. Because the people are the only ones that you're listening to and you're acting on the behalf of.
And it always amazes me how little money it actually takes here in Maui County, especially, to buy the good graces of a politician. You know, there are people in office here who seemingly have sold their souls for as little as $1,000 of a campaign contribution.
It's very sad. It's disturbing. And it kind of makes you wonder, well, if we all hui together, can we donate enough money to make them listen to us? But no, because when you put all the corporations together, we can't come up with that kind of money.
I've wondered the same thing. It's like, well, you know.
What does it take to get them to listen to us?
Yeah, shouldn't we just raise our own money and do our own PAC?
Buy our own.
And buy the politicians off ourselves?
We could, but it would be much better for the community if we just elected politicians who would actually represent the people and made a commitment to not accept their money, those lobby dollars.
So some of that is challenging. It's difficult for any politician to deal with some of the issues that we're facing here in Maui County, because it's such a small island, you know, and everything is so interconnected. And how do you present yourself to the public on some of these issues? For me, one of the big upcoming things, you know, is a potential expansion of the airport into an international airport.
Yes.
You know, we have infrastructure problems here in Maui County as it is. How would that affect life here in Maui County?
Well, it's shocking, and this whole airport runway expansion has come up numerous times throughout the years, and
seems to be on track, that it's going ahead.
They're really pushing for it. So it's going to really take the community getting involved and showing up at meetings and saying, no, we do not want this, or yes, we do want it, if that's what the community really wants. However, I don't think we have the infrastructure to sustain it. The reason for the extension that we've been given is that our runway is not safe. However, the simple fact of the matter is, if our runway were unsafe, there would be no flights going into or out of Maui at all.
Right.
So
you're not buying that argument?
Not at all. The runway is completely safe as it is.
Right.
And when I was at a community meeting about a week and a half or so ago in Lahaina, it was a transportation meeting. The director of transportation for the state, Ford, accidentally let it slip and actually called it the international airport.
Well, it would
Kahului
be
International Airport.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, you know, it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Like, wait a minute, the community hasn't asked for that. The community has fought it time and time again.
Right.
And it looks like we're going to have to just keep on persevering.
Well, we don't. I mean, it seems to me, if you look and do, you know, any kind of assessment of our roadways, you'll see. I mean, people living in Lahaina are already structuring the course of their day based on the traffic jam, knowing that there is going to be a traffic jam.
Yes, it's shocking that it can, on any given day, take up to 2 hours to get to or from Lahaina. It's outrageous, and it can't go on. And when you think about the idea that they're building this massive parking garage at the airport right now, that's designed to hold strictly rent-a-cars, and they're looking at adding 5,000 rental cars, what is that going to do to our roadways? You know, we've already got terrible impacts with the ocean encroaching upon our roadways. We need to realign the highways and whatnot. And until those issues are taken care of, then we simply can't sustain more tourism on this island. And at some point, someone needs to make a bold stand and say, wait a minute, we need to examine what the carrying capacity of our island is, and maybe be honest and say, hey, you know, I think we need a little bit of a tourism cap until we can catch up and we have the affordable housing and the infrastructure that we need, the wastewater treatment. And, you know, until we're generating some of our own electricity here as opposed to just importing oil. Those are important issues that until we solve some of these problems, you know, the one thing nobody's ever talking about is what do we do with the Poly Highway? I mean, 2 lanes, that Poly is a bottleneck.
Sure.
So, but no one wants to talk about that because, oh, it's too expensive.
There's a whole slew of properties along, you know, that South Shoreline that those properties have been developed using loopholes in our planning department process through engineers and permitting. Big holes have been created in those systems, allowing for fraud, seems to be fraud, that engineering reports to get SMA minor permits that exempt builders from installing rainwater remediation.
Yes.
There are very high-profile properties along that stretch, and that's where we're having shoreline erosion to a point where it's going to cost the taxpayers a tremendous amount of money to relocate the road. And the system is still broken. We're doing research now. We spoke about it on other shows, and we'll be talking about it on more shows. Research to be able to bring to the county auditor a presentation and ask the auditor to look into how much money is being siphoned out of the county by residential developers building projects and avoiding the proper rainwater remediation. How much is that process costing the county? And we think, you know, there's billions of dollars at play here that could come back into the county coffers by fixing this problem. That's fixing a historical problem. Yes. And we also have to look ahead at what our future is and what new developments take place and how best to, if those new developments are going to take place, how best they should happen.
Indeed. I think it's important that we look more at how we do development, for sure. First and foremost, we have to make sure that the people of our island are taken care of. You know, we have a growing houseless, unsheltered population that needs to be addressed. We need to look at housing first ideas. We need to get a little bit more creative than we have been. But instead, we have a current incumbent mayor who I'll be so happy once he's replaced with Ellie Cochran. Woohoo! But I'll be so happy because he floats ideas like, well, let's build a train. I'm like, wait a minute, we've got a rail on Oahu that's a big fiasco. We don't want a Disneyland rail here too, you know? Some other people are like, well, we'll just build a tunnel through the West Maui Mountains. Oh no, I don't think so. You know, there are gonna be a lot of people that say no in agreement with that. That's just a bad idea. So we need to change the way we look at affordable housing development. We need to look at a housing first model and look and see what other states have done that have done it successfully. Utah was very successful with their housing first model. And we need to explore more of those ideas and actually implement them before we allow more million-dollar homes to be, you know, built and railroaded through the system and granted exemptions. Shoreline exemptions are just inexcusable. They
are inexcusable. It's a tremendous exploitation and actually potentially puts the county in violation of federal environmental laws, just the same way that we've been violating those laws with the injection wells.
Yes.
And the county has been sued and had to, you know, spend millions of dollars in court. They even had the balls to fight it. And try and defend their inappropriate use of the injection wells, costing the citizens even more millions of dollars in the courts.
And to date, we have no assurance that the injection well issue has even been solved.
But it hasn't been solved. No.
Yeah. No. So we still keep paying fines and whatnot. It's gross, you know. No one wants to swim in bacteria-infested poopy water. It's gross.
I don't understand why the visitors industry doesn't speak out more? How is it that Mike White, as a county council member, continues to have support of that industry when he really doesn't deal with the underlying problems that could possibly destroy the visitors industry?
It's unfortunate, but so often we see with the visitor industry that they would rather just not discuss an issue rather than fix it. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why that is, other than they're afraid to lose the funding that they so desperately need. But it seems to me that if they really want to keep the tourism dollars coming into the state and all that money that they get from the county as well as receive from the state, then they would want to work to solve these issues as well.
You'd think. That's what I keep wondering. I don't understand why, for instance, a shovel-ready bill that would not allow the process to go forward until the county has secured properties to do what needs to be done. Instead, they go systematically. They go ahead and waste money on infrastructure developments that can't possibly be completed.
Indeed, they waste money, and they also just have no foresight as to what will be coming down the pipeline. They don't think about the environmental ramifications at all. It's quite shocking. I'm not sure why it's allowed to continue. Maybe once we get a few more county council members, we'll be able to make some positive changes for the community.
Well, so that begs the question, why, if you run for office, why would it be for state senate and not county council?
Well, I think we have Kelly King representing South Maui right now. I think she's just starting out. She's doing a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. And I think
you live in South Maui,
I live
so
in
that
South
would
Maui.
be your district.
It would.
Right.
I think her intentions are pure, and I want to give her a little more time, see where she stands on many of the issues. Mm-hmm. But state senate's important. There are a lot of bills that we try to get through that just get stopped in one committee, and that's the Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee. Mm-hmm. And if we could have some change up there, then that would make a big difference for our community, not only Maui County, but for the whole state. We might be able to get some more protections from pesticides. That's a big issue in my district.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So I'd like to see some change there.
In 2014, you ran against Roz Baker.
That's correct.
How did that go?
Well, I'm looking forward to challenging her once again. It was a close race. Of course, there's no close. There's only win or lose. So obviously, I'm not a senator today, so I didn't win. However, it was decent for a first-time candidate who'd never been involved with politics before, and who did not have the massive corporate backers like she does. It was a decent run, and I'm ready to give her a good run for her money again, and hopefully help her find her next job.
I want to play a piece. I enjoyed very much, I'm a video producer and a director, and enjoyed very much producing a promotional piece for you back in 2014.
Aloha, I'm Terez Amato, and I'm running for State Senate for South and West Maui. I grew up on Maui and raised my 4 children here, but I never planned on running for office or even considered it until last year when I watched a committee hearing in the State Senate. What I saw in that hearing made me angry. What I saw made it absolutely clear that our elected officials, the people who are supposed to be representing us in our government, were instead serving the interests of corporations, not serving the people who elected them. That is why I have pledged to the people of Hawaii that I will never take money from corporations or lobbyists. You have the power to elect a senator who will always work for the people of Maui, not the corporations and lobbyists. I am Terez Amato, and I work for you. I am working for the people. Thank you.
Being able to use the skills that I have, on a show like this for the community, and being able to promote candidates and get the word out, that's a joy for me. I was the media director for the Shaka movement. Mm-hmm. 85–90% of all of the media that the public saw came through my hands, most of it through my production company. So being able to, go up against Monsanto and actually win in our local election was a phenomenal thing.
That was incredible.
It really was a miracle that we did that. I use it as a benchmark because Monsanto spent in that election, on paper, they spent $12 million, probably more money under the table. Yes. As well that we don't know about. That's the most that was ever spent in any local election in the history of the United States. And that money was spent targeting your vote here in Maui County. Why is your vote so important to these corporations? We are at the top of a slippery slope, and the corporate initiatives don't allow for any movement on that slippery slope. Westpac is a good example of that. Their control, their interests in big fishing won't allow them to support any measure that restricts or limits fishing, even how appropriate or necessary it might be. Westpac fought the recent aquarium fish bill that would have regulated the harvesting of reef fish, and not for any good reason. They did it because they don't want anybody telling them what they can do with our oceans and our marine resources. And that's the kind of corporate control that we suffer from here.
It's selfish and it's very greedy.
Yeah.
And it lacks, what happens in the future? What do we do when the reef fish are actually gone? How does that impact our tourism? Everybody's so worried about losing tourism as a revenue stream. Well, what do we do if we don't take care of our resources that we have now to make sure that those reef fish continue to thrive? Right now we see a massive decline of the coral bleaching here on Maui, you know, and Oluwalu is known to be the spawning ground for not only West Maui, but also for Lanai and Molokai as well. So we have to make sure we protect these special fragile areas for the future.
And, the way I see it as well, I've said earlier that the county is at risk of federal prosecution for our unwillingness to correct the loopholes that are in our planning and construction process. The county council members are well aware at this point that we have problems, and the body as a whole has refused to deal with these issues. And it's a necessary fix.
It must be done. I take heart hoping that with the next election we'll be able to make a few really great changes there, and hopefully we can start moving the county towards a different direction.
That's super. Well, I appreciate that. Water is almost always at the top of the list of issues here in Maui County, the control of water.
Yes.
And A&B's monopoly of that.
Indeed, and we just received notification that Upcountry is under water restrictions again. And you have to wonder, A&B isn't growing anything right now except for some GMO corn and a very small percentage of conventional corn. So what are they doing with all their water? The first priority really needs to be providing our farmers, our local food growers, with the water that they need to survive and to provide for the island, for the whole state. We have the opportunity to grow food for the whole state. Right now we're still importing about 95% of our food from the continental United States. It's wrong, it's irresponsible. What if a big catastrophe should happen and the ships stop coming? What do we do? Well, we need to get control of the water back. And I believe right now at the county council they're working on trying to buy the irrigation ditches, but is that enough? I think we need to really throttle back what A&B does, maybe start charging them fair market value for the water that they waste and allow to just seep into the soil, and take control of our precious resources. These resources are, outlined in our Constitution as for the public, for the good of the public. Well, A&B is not public. It's a private corporation with where their main interest is producing money for their shareholders. And it's time we took back our precious resources.
A&B recent talks at the community level, speaking about their diversified agriculture,
Oh, gosh.
they talked about one of the issues is corn, that they're growing BT corn,
Yes.
Which is a genetically modified crop and only suitable. It's not for human consumption. So again, they're using our resources and exposing the community to a GM crop with no food benefit.
Not only that, but they're planning on selling it to, I believe it's cattle ranching or a dairy over on Hawai'i Island. And so then, of course, we don't know the effects of those toxic GE crops. People say, oh, it's safe, it's safe. The fact of the matter is we have not determined beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is absolutely safe. And it does end up in our food stream.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen that glyphosate ends up in our milk and whatnot. It ends up in our body whether we try to avoid it or not. And so we have a responsibility to minimize that introduction to our food system as much as possible.
And corn is, I'm always baffled by the notion of feeding corn to cattle. It's an absurd practice. Corn is not an appropriate cattle feed, whether it's GM corn or not. Cattle eat grass.
Yes.
And for Monsanto to think that they can push their corn product, whether it's GM corn or not, it doesn't matter. Maui's value, the value of any cattle operation that is taking place on Maui is because those cows are grass-fed.
That's correct.
Cows can't digest corn properly. They get bacterial infections and require antibiotics because they're being fed corn.
And we've seen that with the introduction of antibiotics and growth hormones and whatnot, that's adversely affecting the human population as well, and how we receive antibiotics in our system. We're seeing antibiotic-resistant strains of diseases coming about because of this. It's really irresponsible, and in my personal view, there shouldn't be any open air growing of genetic products until it's proved conclusively beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's safe. And that may never come. We may never know that. And so it should, if you want to grow it, fine. You want a special permit or a special license, you're willing to pay the taxes to do that, that's okay, but it needs to be done in a greenhouse. It cannot be done in the open air.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the GM aspect of those commercial crops is one thing. What we learned through the course of the 2014 GM moratorium, of course, is that it's not just the genetic modification of the crop seed itself, it's that so many of these crops are grown in conjunction with a specified pesticide use.
Yes.
Specifically, most often it's the glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup as a herbicide.
Yes.
And that's a problem. You know, glyphosate, having widespread application of glyphosate was the reason for many people chose to object to the cane burning.
Yes.
That HC&S used to do in the cane fields, because as a regular part of the cane burning practice, they would spray the cane with glyphosate about a month before the burn.
Just prior to harvest, as a ripener.
As a ripener, it would cause it would kill the leaves and brown the leaves on the cane stalks so that they were more easily burned when they went to do it. Mm-hmm. They didn't actually kill the plant. It was a weak application of glyphosate, but widespread. A widespread regular application of that kind of pesticide, which now in California, for instance, is being labeled publicly as a carcinogen.
That's correct.
That we in Maui County are, have been subjected to that kind of activity without our consent. I think it pissed a lot of people off. So it's not just the GM aspect of it, it's the pesticide aspect of it.
Absolutely. You know, if people are given the choice, I'm sure 9 out of 10 people will say, no, I don't want to be poisoned. You know, simple fact of the matter. I'd rather not be sprayed with Raid. Thank you very much. You drive along the highways and you see all the no spray, please no sprays all over.
Right. People
would rather just not be poisoned. And it's not necessary. There are many alternatives to these toxic chemicals. So.
There's more to our show in just a moment. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. On a state level, running for state senate, what other initiatives do you see that would be a part of your campaign platform if you do choose to run?
Well, in the event that I do choose to run, as you know, my stroke is kind of it was a big eye-opener for me. And
I don't think, Terez, it is kind of miraculous. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I really want to really heartfelt say that, you know, playing your video from 2014 and having you sitting here at the table, I don't see a difference in you. I know, and people you don't know probably, that Terez suffered a significant major stroke. And that you have brought yourself back. This is kind of your first public unveiling, and you've done a phenomenal job.
Thank you. It's been quite a journey.
I can well imagine.
But
if you didn't talk about it, we wouldn't know it.
Thank you. I wasn't expected to live. It was a massive hemorrhagic stroke. My neurologist says I'm in the top 1% of all stroke survivors, which is kind of a miracle. It makes you think, okay, I must be here for a purpose. And to me, that really means I'm here to try and do my best to serve the community and say, hey, you need someone that's willing to represent you and really go to bat for you and stand up and say, no, the people aren't going to take this anymore. We're going to stop selling off to the highest bidder. It's not okay anymore. We have to put people first. And so for me, personal things like universal health care, because quite frankly, had I not had medical coverage, and I'll just be honest right now and say I was covered through Kaiser Quest, so that's the state's Medicaid program.
Right.
But had it not been for Quest, I would not be here today. That and the support of my mate, who was an awesome cheerleader who lived in the hospital with me for a few months while I went through the recovery process. And so I walk a little slower now, but I won't be very soon. I'd still use a cane, but I'm getting ready to throw that thing away too. I'm ready to be back to my old self and running and hiking and, you know, planting food and doing all those things again and serving the community.
Well, it's wonderful, and it is a testament to your the gumption and the drive that you have to be the best version of yourself that you can be, and to be of most value to your community. You know, I know it would be you know, easy to just sit back and enjoy life, and you seem dedicated to the cause, and that's greatly appreciated, because we are so desperately in need of candidates who have a heart, who understand the issues. And have a willingness to press back against the powers that be. It's very challenging to make waves in this community.
It is, but I'm encouraged that there are more and more people that are beginning to stand up and say, hey, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight back. And, you know, we saw in Iao Valley how, I believe it was Mikiala, she went and stood in front of that big excavator when the county was doing that horrendous realignment of the river on behalf of Wailuku Water. That was just outrageous, you know? So it's encouraging to see more people in the community standing up saying, nope, sorry, that's wrong, we're not gonna let you do that anymore. And I think we're gonna see that more and more. I think we've actually reached that tipping point where now things will start to change in our favor and we can start making some serious headway. You know, Hawaii is critically positioned that we could be a model for the world. And it's only going to happen if people are willing to get involved and will work harder and do more work to, you know, to see that happen. But we could be a model for the world with alternative energy, with food growing. You know, we could have a completely sustainable model here. And I think that the time is coming that we're going to start to make that happen.
Well, so on the state level, as a state senator, health initiative, where would you take that in support of a form of universal health care?
Single payer, absolutely. Everyone should have the right to be able to go to the doctor and not have to worry about how they're going to pay their bills or whether they're going to lose their job because they're caring for a sick mate. You know, my mate Joe, he faced some problems at work where they didn't want to allow him to be able to help care for me and whatnot. They caused some serious problems. They denied his Family Medical Leave Act request because we're not legally married. So somehow in their eyes, he didn't count, I don't count as his family.
Spouse,
yeah.
Right.
And that's just wrong, you know. It shouldn't matter if it's your mom or your child or your mate. Everyone has the right to live, basically. You know, people have the right to both live and die as they see fit, and our caregivers should not be punished for helping to support those wishes. So yes, I fully support single-payer universal health care. To me, that's the gold standard that we have to work towards. And the idea that we're the only country in the world,
industrialized nation, right,
that doesn't offer universal health care, it's shocking and it's pretty sad. The United States has one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world, and it's unnecessary and it's completely ridiculous. You know, if small European countries can provide health care for all of their citizens, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that here in Hawaii and throughout the United States.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. How can people support you as a political candidate?
So I haven't set out the press release yet saying that I'm formally running, but I'm still, you know, I believe I have a responsibility to the community to make sure that I feel confident enough in my progress with physical therapy and occupational therapy so that I'm really up for the task, because I want to serve the community the best I possibly can. So I haven't actually declared yet, but once I do, people can, I'm going to need all the help in the world, you know? So volunteers would be outstanding. I'm going to be knocking on doors as much as I possibly can every day until the election, and even on the day of the election. So volunteers are more than welcome. Donations, totally, you know, until we are able to change campaign finance, it still requires money to run an election. And it's not a track race, it's a political race where we're all working and fighting for change. So I appreciate all the help and support from the community, and I'm also looking forward to helping to support other candidates too. I know we're going to have some great people running in the upcoming election.
So if people wanted, and I'm encouraging, this is me planting a seed in you to go and take action and reach out to her, to encourage her to run. We're trying to get candidates on the ballots and come forward. And Terez needs your encouragement to make that choice, to pull the trigger, to put her neck on the block. It's not an easy thing to run for office here, and it's a small community, and you're greatly affected by people who don't see the policies that we're talking about here in a favorable light. There's a lot of folks that to me, I mean, I just can never understand why they're willing to drink the Kool-Aid of corporations. But it's been said that it's difficult to get someone to understand the change that needs to be made if their current income, if their job depends on the status quo. And I think people are just tied to their existing system, and they're just afraid of change.
Indeed. Many of us often are. But as people begin to start paying attention a little bit more to what's going on, they realize their jobs are actually being adversely affected by many of these issues that we're facing.
Long term, I think that's true, and
yes.
I consistently bring that up to the members of our community that are involved in unions. There's nothing wrong with unions; play an absolutely vital role in our society.
Yes.
But there does tend to be an influence that towards consistent
status quo.
Exploitation by developers to keep construction trades, for instance, going, even in an environment where the construction is harming the local community.
And not sustainable.
And construction in the form of projects that are not sustainable, yeah. You know, here in Maui County and across the state, houselessness is an issue. How do you see that we could help with creating the real lifetime low-income housing here in Maui County?
As someone who lives in North Kihei, there was an empty area right across from my apartment in Kihei Villages, and that field my kids used to affectionately call hobo dumps because there were so many houseless families there. Mm-hmm. You know, and what they needed more than anything was just a basic support system, maybe some help, maybe some mental health services. We have very little mental health services right now mm-hmm. available, especially with all the recent changes at the hospital. They're still trying to get up online.
Sure.
And there's a shortage of physicians on this island. So until we can provide some basic needs, we need to move towards a housing first model and maybe make some allowances. Okay, if people are going to form encampments in these areas, maybe we need to have safe zones where they don't have to worry about how on Oahu they do those horrendous sweeps, mm-hmm. where they come and kick people out in the middle of the night when they're sleeping and they throw all their things away. That's shocking. Like, my God, how uncompassionate could you possibly be?
And they do that in advance of a public event that's going to use the streets, and they don't want the press or the media to have to take pictures of homeless people during the course of their event.
It's shocking. Is there no compassion left in this world? We're all fellow humans, you know? We're all related somehow. So I think it's entirely possible to create safe zones where people can live and exist peacefully, maybe have showers and the resources that they need to do that, to provide for themselves. Maybe have small little garden spaces, and you know, I think there are very simple, cost-effective ways that we can begin to address these issues, and then begin looking at a much larger model where we have actual affordable housing that can be permanent housing for people. Once people are in houses, it's been shown that everything becomes much more stable. Their health improves, you know, they begin to find stable work and whatnot. We need to provide housing for people.
Houselessness, I understand, will take 20 years off your lifespan, and the cost involved in acquiring the cost of medical care for houseless individuals is astronomical. It would cost less to give them a house than it costs to pay for their use of emergency rooms.
That's correct.
As their medical treatment.
Absolutely. And it makes total sense. As a single parent, you know, I knew the stress of, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay my bills this month? And if I didn't have to worry about that, if I knew that I'd be able to pay my bills and buy food for my kids and everything they need, the stress would be reduced and I'd be a much healthier, happier person. And if we can provide that for all of our community citizens, we're going to have a much more productive and happier community, which will then attract more tourists, oddly enough. It can only create positive benefits through and through.
Hawaii is a bit of a challenge when it comes to public entitlements. I don't know when the process took place, but there was a point in time when the Supreme Court ruled to say that no states could change the minimum requirements for receiving public assistance. Many states were moving, as Hawaii has no residency requirement. many states were moving to institute a residency requirement. Literally, you can get off the plane here in Hawaii, hit the street, and apply for public assistance. And that becomes a magnet for people who are in need to come into the community, because there's no waiting time, there's no processing time. They're immediately eligible just because they've arrived. And many states, were able to initiate waiting periods, which helps buffer the state's responsibility to the public. But with the Supreme Court ruling, Hawaii was not able to lengthen or add a residency requirement. And it's frozen that way, mandated by the courts.
And so we've heard stories about how other states have been sending their at-risk individuals to Hawaii because the weather is better, and they advertise, oh, you can just go and pick your food off trees and whatnot, it's paradise. And I think that studies have actually shown that that's simply not the case. That actually one of the most at-risk communities here in our state are the Hawaiians. So obviously they're not being flown here because they've been desperately trying to go elsewhere where they can find more work and whatnot, which is unacceptable too. It's a form of genocide, really. But one thing that Hawaii does have, and I'm not really familiar with the AFDC programs and the TANF programs in other states, but Hawaii does have limits on how long you can receive assistance. Mm-hmm. And they do have work requirements. Mm-hmm. And I think that the program works, but one of the problems we see with that program is people often fall into the gap of they don't make exactly enough to be able to be self-sufficient and survive on their own, yet they make just slightly too much to actually qualify for any assistance. And that's where we need to put more effort and energy into making sure that people aren't in that middle gap ground, because then that leads to situations of, well, I'm not going to declare this because then it'll affect my benefits.
Right.
We should be helping people, give them the tools that they need to advance and to earn more wealth, rather than punishing them for trying to do better.
And those kinds of bridging the gap situations are often where not-for-profit activities can have a real impact, where social benefit programs, whether it's church-based or whatever, can really help people bridge in those kinds of situations.
That's true, but I think that we've been seeing a lot of budget cuts and funding cuts come from the county as well as the state that have been hurting our nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And so it puts a larger burden on the community to try and help fill in those gaps. I think it's time to really reevaluate where we're spending our money and how we're spending it, and look at what benefits people first. It's kind of like, okay, you've got to have a litmus test for money spending. Who does this benefit? How does it benefit them? How can we do better? So I think once we start looking at problems from that perspective, from the perspective of the person, then I think we'll start seeing some really great changes and good ideas come across. And I think it's important for people from all different backgrounds to come and sit down together, even people that maybe don't agree. But then people can kind of hash it out and say, well, what about this idea? And work together and collaborate. I think that's the role of any good elected leader, is to be able to collaborate with people that you may not always agree with and come up with something that truly benefits the people.
Well, that is the job of being a politician. It's challenging. I know I have a hard time facing individuals that are so steadfastly supportive of exploitation practices. I have a hard time sitting across someone who's lying to me to my face. About their activities and who they are truly representing as a constituent. I know I couldn't survive as a politician because I have no tolerance for that.
I understand that as well. There are certain people I want to just kind of honestly smack them upside the head and say, what is wrong with you? What are you thinking? How can you do this, But then you have to step back and take a deep breath and kind of say, okay, let's sit and see where you have, if you're willing to find it, you have common ground with everyone somewhere.
Right.
And it's from that point of common ground that you can sit down and begin to work together. I think it's possible, and I think it's sorely neglected in our current political system.
It's hard. You know, when for instance, we have a mayor who hires friends and appoints them as directors of departments in our county, and they are not qualified for those jobs, and their job, going to work every day in that job, they are actively hurting aspects of our community.
Indeed, it seems that their only function is to be obstructionist. And so that's why I'm ready to campaign and support a new vision for the future. And I'm super excited, and I like to promote Ellie as often as I can, because, you know, one thing that strikes me about her is that she's not afraid to stand alone if it means she's standing on the right side of an issue. If she knows that she's standing for the people, she's not afraid to stand alone in any situation. That is a hugely admirable quality, and she's one of my role models. I love her. She's great. Vote for Ellie.
That's great. We really appreciate it. How can people reach you to give messages of support for your campaign?
Thank you. So my website is currently being rebuilt right now, but I can be found on Facebook. I'm using that as my primary platform until the website's done. So that's facebook.com/Terez Amato. And I can respond to messages on there very quickly. And I'm happy to answer any and all questions. There is no topic that's off subject. You know, I'm not afraid to answer any questions. Ask away. I'm not shy. I'm happy to talk with you. I'll even give you my personal phone number if you'd rather talk on the phone. Give me a call. is there an email address? Yeah, it's terez.amato@yahoo.com. So terez.amato@yahoo.com.
Great. Any other topics that you want to get to today that we haven't touched?
You know, what's really been kind of touching on my heart lately has been the desecration of the iwi that's been going on all over. You see it going on here at Maui Lani, and with this plan to revitalize Kaanapali, there are burials all throughout that whole stretch of Kaanapali that are going to be unearthed. And to me, that's wrong. To me personally, that's a form of cultural genocide, which to me is an extension of genocide of a people. Once you wipe out their sacred spaces, their history, you're essentially their language, you're essentially trying to just wipe out a people in genocide. And I think that more people need to stand up against that desecration. We most certainly don't need Kaanapali to be revitalized until we can handle the issue of the injection wells, and until we can figure out what we're doing with all that traffic. And the solution isn't to just build more roads, because what happens then is you build more roads, you build more buildings to go along with them. You build more gas stations, more all of that, and so you're just compounding the problem. So I think we need to stop and start paying attention to our cultural leaders and listening to them and taking heart, saying, wait a minute, this is a sensitive area. We have a responsibility to protect it for the future generations. I mean, you've got privatization of parks at Keawe-Kapu. They're trying to privatize a gravel parking lot out there. Well, what's the community going to do? You cut off beach access. People are already paying to go watch sunrise. Do they have to pay to go watch sunset now? Where do our children go to the beach? Once we begin disconnecting all these things that make us Hawaii, what's left? We might as well be some beltway, Midwest state or whatever. We're not, we're Hawaii, so we cannot lose the things that make us uniquely Hawaii.
And that message is particularly important to members of the Hawaiian community. The Kanaka, especially for folks that have had an aversion for participating in the political system because you think that it would legitimize the illegality of the existing political system. It's important to use all the tools that are available to you, and your registration as a voter is one of those tools. If you don't take action now, what will be left if the sovereignty movement were to be successful at some point in the future? What's left to save? If we can't step forward now as a community and draw the line in the sand, quite literally, for protecting the reefs and changing our local laws and ordinances so that the environment is appropriately protected, stopping developers who are, certain developers I like to say, who are well connected and receive favoritism in the application of permits and exemptions of our shoreline management system. The SMA permitting system here in Maui County is terribly abused. In many ways, there have been exploitations on properties, high-end properties, and that system is still broken. That system still needs to be fixed, and it represents a tremendous amount of value to the taxpayers of Maui County. We need to change ordinances. We need to change our charter in several functional ways to improve things going forward and fix some of the exploitation that's been happening in the past.
Completely agree with you.
Terez, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know what a challenge it is to come out, and I know how inherently shy you are, and I appreciate your hard work and continued good progress in regaining your full mobility. It's obvious to me that the stroke that you went through hasn't affected your mental capacity. You're as sharp as a tack and still wonderfully expressive and right on point. So continued success in all of that.
Well, thank you so much. And right now, I am going to go off and do more therapy.
Super.
Thank you.
Enjoy it. I know how challenging that can be.
Therapy is a lot of fun.
Thank you all for joining us, and
join
us again on another episode of Maui Causes. Thanks to Todd and Sleepy John in the studio. Aloha. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.